Welcome dear students to a new virtual tutorial class. Today we are taking the first semester English core paper, and the topic we are taking is out of the modern period of English literary and social history, and the topic precisely is the suffragette movement. So as you see on the board, the topic today is the suffragette movement. So let us try to understand what this movement is. Now it's a movement, so it means it's a campaign, right? So the suffragette movement is a campaign. Now campaign for what? Campaign for voting rights, campaign for suffrage. So this is the root word, suffrage. Suffrage means right to vote. So the suffragette movement is a campaign demanding suffrage. Now suffrage for whom? Suffrage for women. That is why the use of the feminine suffix "ette", suffragette movement. So the suffragette movement is a movement or a campaign demanding or advocating the right to vote for women. And this was a campaign which started in the early 20th century. Now, but it also has a tradition. Nothing comes out of nothing. It doesn't come out of the blue, so to say. Now, women have traditionally been not given the right to vote, be it in the ancient Greek democracies or even in later times in other democracies. Women were barred from voting. But in the 18th and 19th centuries, the time of the Enlightenment, there were slowly but surely advocates of universal suffrage, that is, right to vote for everyone over a certain age, irrespective of gender, caste, creed, or religion. So in England or UK and also in the United States in the 18th and 19th centuries, there were these people who demanded rights, voting rights for women. Those campaigners were called suffragists. Now there's a difference here, we'll come to that. So the suffragists are people, both male and female, who advocated right to vote for women on equal terms with men. So even in the late 18th century, people like Mary Wollstonecraft, they wrote about the necessity of the right to vote for women in the vindication of the rights of women. So that was in the late 18th century. In the 19th century, the Victorian period, which is also called the period of reforms, democratic reforms, the electorate was expanded one by one. People like John Stuart Mill actually petitioned the parliament to grant universal suffrage, that is, cutting across gender. So this was the tradition. There were suffragists, there were people demanding the right to vote for women in the 18th and 19th centuries. But these campaigns or these appeals were not working. They fell on deaf ears. It was a sort of a cry in the wilderness. So come the 20th century, there came a change. In 1903, this organization, Women's Social and Political Unity, was formed in the UK by Emmeline Pankhurst, a very important name. So Emmeline Pankhurst founded this organization called Women's Social and Political Union in the UK in 1903. This was an organization of women advocating women's voting rights, and they were militant, unlike the suffragists of earlier, who were both male and female, and who actually supported only peaceful means. Their demands were peaceful, non-violent. Now the suffragettes of the 20th century are different. They are only women, militant women, using violence, hunger strikes, protest, damage to public property, disruption to House of Commons. All these methods, violent methods, were used by these group of militant women who were called suffragettes, led by Emmeline Pankhurst and her daughters as well. So this was a big change from the suffragists of the earlier times to this violent movement, militant movement led by Emmeline Pankhurst and her daughters Christabel and Sylvia. So this was the change. This was the suffragette movement. Now this term suffragette actually was a journalistic term. It was a newspaper which used this term in a derogatory way. The Daily Mail actually used the term in a derogatory way, referring to these militant women as the suffragettes. But these women actually were okay with it. They took up the term, and this term stuck. It clicked, and they said they were in fact suffragettes, and their motto was deeds, not words. So action. They were ready for action to get their dues. So from about 1906, actually, these women of the WSPU, led by Pankhurst and others also, like Emily Davison, they came to be called the suffragettes. Unlike the earlier suffragists, these suffragettes continued their violent movement, militant movement, demanding voting rights for women, universal suffrage, up to 1914. And with the breakout of the World War I, in 1914, this movement was suspended. But then in 1918, women above the age of 30 with certain property qualifications were given the right to vote. And in 1928, so 1918, women above the age of 30, the 1928, women above the age of 21 got the right to vote in the UK, and this was the parity with men. So this was the universal suffrage won by women in 1928 in UK. That was a big victory. This is part of the first phase or first wave feminism as well. The struggle for women's emancipation, equality, political and legal rights, primarily the right to vote. So that was the victory of the women, and that was you can say the suffragette movement of the early 20th century. So that was a brief outline of what this suffragette movement is. This is a term which is there in your syllabus, part of the Enlightenment and modern period. You might be asked to write short notes on the suffragette movement, or even certain objective type questions might be put about names, dates, etc. So I hope this has been of help to you. This will help you in understanding the women's movement, the feminism as a whole, and also this particular movement called the suffragette movement. So I hope this will stand you in good stead.